Hey, all my Gemini friends. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your October 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Gemini, I'm talking about Gemini ruling the first house and dictating the landscape of the chart. This is also applicable to Gemini Sun and Gemini Moon. And if you have 3 or more planets in the sign of Gemini, this video is for you as well. When I refer to a day and a time, it's based on the Pacific time zone. So please adjust for your location. The month starts off with an eclipse on the 2nd. Then we're going to see a challenging aspect between Mars and the eclipse, which I think has been ramping up. Mars is currently in Cancer and it is in its fall. We are going to see Jupiter go retrograde this month. We're going to see Pluto go direct this month. It is actually a huge, huge month for the energies to shift. And they feel a bit disruptive, I'll be honest, in the sense that people will be extremely impassioned and to the point where they may not be very good listeners, but they'll be very good talkers. Let's put the chart up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, my Geminis. The wheel, I can't dictate it. So right now it's actually in the opposite of yours, because here's Gemini as the first house here, but this is actually the 7th house. Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you. But let's look. On the first day of the month, we see that the Sun and Mercury are conjunct. On the very next day, at just about the same time, we're going to experience an eclipse. So right now, the mind, our interactions with our neighbors, with our communities, with the people that we work with, the people that we interact with on a daily basis, literally the news outlets, from television to radio to newspapers, anything that's dispensing information is coming up for some sort of awareness. And that awareness will be indicated by the solar eclipse, meaning I believe that having this eclipse happening in the sign of Libra, it will be, I'm going to move over to the eclipse right now. And that happens at 11:49 a.m. I'm going to change the time just in case you all want to know the exact time of the eclipse. Oh, that should be a.m. Sorry. I'm like, that's not right. Here we go. Okay. So now we see that this eclipse in Libra is at 10 degrees. This is very significant because the 10th degree is the Capricorn degree. It is the degree that rules restriction, government, authority, leadership, public status and reputation. And it's really sort of how government has that trickle-down effect on us. And it's in the 11th house, which is a house that rules humanity, the cosmic consciousness. It's a place that holds our innovation. It's a place that holds space, aviation, travel into the future, both philosophically as well as through technology. It's also a house where our hopes and dreams are realized, but those hopes and dreams are usually realized in later chapters. The 11th house is known as an Upachaya house and is originally the domain of Aquarius. Now here we see this Libra overlay where we're looking for innovation to be more peaceful, to be more diplomatic, to be more authentic within our committed relationships. And we also have this dynamic of being able to reach people throughout the world. The 11th house rules social networks, meaning these platforms that we engage and we interact on. So now we have this planting of the seeds of a new moon is the darkest phase of the moon, where the sun and the moon come together and create an energetic baby. And that baby is reflective of your intention. Now we see Mercury is conjunct this eclipse at 11 degrees. Spirit will tell you when you see a series of ones that the angelic realm is informing you that your thoughts are manifesting very quickly. So be mindful. And just as a side note, and I'll get to it a little more in a minute, Venus is at the 11th degree. So we are literally seeing 11, 11, 10, 10, a series of ones that are offering us an opportunity to be aware of our mind, to be aware of how we think, and to plant the seeds for a new experience. Now, the idea, Libra is your fifth house. The fifth house is your creative expression. It is your sense of romance, fun, pleasure, entertainment, hobbies. It's the house where you take your creative ideas and you put them on a stage for everyone to see. It rules the high school years when our first early romances put us on a stage with our friends and we become very visible. I think this is important because what we're looking at here is Libra rules partnership, both professional and marriage partnership. Now, Libra is your fifth house of romance. And we are looking at a new moon at the 10th degree conjunct Mercury. This is giving Gemini an opportunity because your ruling planet is conjunct this eclipse to really start to think about how you receive your applause for your ideas, how much you enjoy your life, how much cooperation, balance, harmony, and peace is there, and to put the seeds in and to sow the seeds for that experience more consistently is the way I want to put it. We also know, or we see here, that this solar eclipse is having a square aspect to Mars in Cancer. Cancer is your second house of money, of your self-worth. And that self-worth is that personal experience you had as a child and how your parents or your family supported your dreams, supported your confidence. Mars is challenged in Cancer. It's considered in fall. It's, Cancer is emotional. Mars is not. Mars is more, let's get it done. So Mars has to slow down and feel emotions it doesn't like to feel in order to be effectual. So the square here between this little stellium of planets, I haven't even talked about the South Node, and I'll bring that up in a minute, is in contrast or in a tense moment with Mars, because Mars does not want to compromise. Mars rules the house that is complete opposite, which is Libra. So Mars rules Aries, and right now it's having a square conversation with its opposite house. So it's being asked to be emotional and aware and have a certain IQ in order to get the task at hand done. So this now speaks to the idea that you, Gemini, get to really look at your second house and say, am I still steamed about how I was raised or how I was nurtured? Or am I willing now to move forward to let myself have new creative ideas, a new sense of romance, a new sense of the possibilities of co-creation with another person, and open that space up? Because the South Node being conjunct this eclipse, and we're only on the second day of the month, is really a point of release. They say it releases the toxic waste. And the toxic waste in this particular case would be over cooperation, overly diminishing yourself in some way. So if you didn't think your talents were good enough, or you're a person who only sings when you're alone and you sound amazing, but you can't get breath in front of an audience, it's time to allow your voice to blossom. And I think this is really, really powerful. We're going to see in a couple of days, Venus is going to have a trine with Mars, offering an opportunity to be brave. And I want to put it this way, because whatever it is that you want to manifest, whether it be a full-blown marriage partner relationship, whether it feeling more connected to your communities, to your hopes and your dreams, to moving yourself forward with balance and harmony into a new chapter, all of those things are possible when you allow yourself the ability to focus. And we can't always focus on the house. Sometimes we have to go straight to how it feels, because the human can connect to their emotional body. Sometimes we don't always know the path to walk down, but we can feel it. So let's go to the 7th. I'm going to move this back to 12 o'clock. It's kind of a midday range. And we're going to go to the 7th, and we're going to see Venus is in a trine with Mars, almost exact. A little off here, but that's okay. I think this is important because as Venus and Mars are both in challenging signs, Venus is in detriment in Scorpio. She is very vulnerable to the powers that be, to the money, to the sex, to the manipulation of Scorpio. And Mars is in a sign that's asking me to be emotionally aware of things I don't want to deal with. But here there's some sort of cooperation. We see that Venus is willing to look at where there is power and control over her psyche. And Mars is willing to be like, if I want these people or I want this situation, then I get to start to be more intuitively aware of how we can connect our needs and wants. I think this is important because I think this is further evidenced by Saturn's very loose trine to Mars, representing Saturn represents history, not the history of mankind, but also in Pisces, it's representing the soul's history. And this is giving an opportunity to be brave and to intuit and to use that intuition as a tool to be a better warrior, a peaceful warrior. And I think that is cutting through the potential manipulation of what money means, what sex means, what other people's opinions potentially mean of your personal success. We do see this square to Chiron from Mars and a square to the Sun and Mercury. And again, this is where Mars is really sort of having to be aware of his own personal wound of not being seen, not being accepted, feeling abandoned, and then putting yourself out there in a way, this is your 5th house, that exposes you to others. And it could be because you're exposing your creativity. You feel exposed because you're talking to the universe about things that you want that you've been shutting down up until now, or you've been pushing aside. This is really, really, really powerful. Now, let's go to the 9th, where we will see Jupiter retrograde in your 1st house. I'll see if I've got the time right. Yes, Jupiter has gone into retrograde at 21 degrees. It will retrograde all the way back to 11 degrees. There we see that 11 again, giving us awareness of our mind, an awareness of how our thoughts tend to dictate our actions. And our thoughts are simply our beliefs that come up, our emotional beliefs that come up through the head and the mind and then get acted out by the body. This retrograde will happen from October 9th, 2024 until February 4th, 2025. And then Jupiter will proceed forward until June, when it moves into its exaltation of Cancer. So this is really powerful. We will see here, we'll click on this. We're going to see a series of revisits of the planets. And I think that the one that seems most powerful to me right now is the one I can't see, because Gemini, has a tendency to go back and forth. And because there are short, it tends to hang on to those short bits of information, the taglines, the headlines. And this is where the challenge could be, because if indeed you're not giving yourself enough depth of information or depth of discovery about something, you could inadvertently be blindsided by Venus's energy, and that could trigger your insecurity. That's where I'm going with this. And when I see the favorable aspects of Jupiter starting its retrograde to Mercury and the Sun, as well as Chiron, it gives me an opportunity to look at my belief system. Aries is your 11th house. So we were seeing the 11th house is your innovation, your future you, your hopes and your dreams. the flying high, the aviation of the 11th house coming up and giving you sight you didn't see before because you're willing to expand your beliefs, your ideas of yourself. I also think that the Sun and Mercury, while this will be a fairly brief transit, it's important because we're really getting to see how we think and to see how it projects out into my physical experience. And again, this is your 5th house of pleasure and joy. This is your 11th house of hopes and dreams. This is your 1st house of self. And then Scorpio is your 12th house of, your 12th house of Scorpio. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Taurus, is your 6th house of work. I got myself confused for a minute. So you have an opportunity to shift the 6th house is work, it's employers, it's employees. It's also your mental health, meaning how stress affects you, and it's your pets. So here, I think this is you're going to have an opportunity to see or feel a psychological imprint more than likely. Now, the reason I say feel it is even though this is a blind side, the positive aspects to the Sun and Mercury and Chiron are making me feel something I know is holding me back. I don't need to identify exactly what it is. It could be, I'm afraid I'm not going to have enough money. I'm afraid I'm not good enough. I'm afraid I'm not young enough. I'm afraid blah, blah, blah. And your willingness to just sort of move forward without identifying the problem, but rather moving to the solution will be very powerful. And that's what Jupiter's whole retrograde is going to be about in your 1st house of self. How do I see myself? How do I perceive myself? What permissions do I give myself? Super, super important. Now, 2 days later, we're not even through the half of October yet. We go and Pluto goes direct. So I think it's a little later in the day. Let me move to, let's say, 10 p.m. just to be safe. Pluto has now moved direct. Now we look at that 29th degree, and Pluto's been retrograding at 29 degrees. So the whole time Pluto is retrograding in Capricorn, your 8th house of transformation, of death and rebirth, and of social status, because we've got that Capricorn energy layered onto the Scorpio energy. So you've been given an opportunity to revisit how you think. 29 reduces down to an 11. So we see those ones again. 29th degree for me is also the degree of mastery. It's the Leo degree. It's where I stand in leadership, where I've experienced all the degrees of that sign, and now I'm familiar with them, and I take that information into the next sign's energy. And that's really powerful because we're looking at Aquarius as your 9th house, and this is a house that is going to rewrite your belief system and potentially broaden your ability to make money. The 9th house is a house of business, commerce, higher education. And now this is going to be Aquarius for you. So this is naturally trines your 1st house. It naturally will, all the air signs naturally trine one another. So this is a favorable energy for you, and it's renewal. It's a sort of a metamorphosis from the caterpillar into that actual butterfly. And I think as a result of your shifting in your belief system, you could see more money coming in, more collaborations potentially with people or clients, or potential resources, avenues for income coming in. So that's real important. All right, now let's go to the 13th. And Mercury will move into Scorpio. I'm going to move this back to noon. Well, maybe I shouldn't move it back to noon for now. Mercury's just moved into Scorpio. Now the wheel is as it should be for Gemini. So we see here your 1st house. There's Jupiter going retrograde in your 1st house. We see here's Mars in your 2nd house, and here's your 5th house. Okay. As Mercury moves into Scorpio, you could find yourself being very aware of a dual way of thinking, sort of thinking I see Mercury here making a square to Pluto. And this could make you aware of either your own psychological imprint or potentially start seeing patterns in other people. and maybe other people that you work with. You could even potentially be more aware of how stress affects the need for power and control in your life, or a need for others to control you. That square to Pluto is significant because Mercury had an opposition with Pluto 3 times in 2023 when Mercury was retrograde in the summertime. And they had some real serious conversations about the monkey mind versus the deep psychology with which we make our decisions. And here I feel the square is this sort of fork in the road for you, where you, Gemini, get to really start to decide, do I start to take actions, in the direction I want to go, whether I can see the road or see the viability of it? Do I start with my emotional body, my psychological body, my belief system? Or do I just default and go back to what I know and what is familiar, but what is not comfortable? Because somehow I feel overpowered. And that's what this square has to offer. Never easy. Now let's go to, I'll say it, my birthday. And we have a full moon. I'll be very old on my birthday, so we won't talk about that. But the full moon will be at 4:26 a.m. And this is a full moon in Aries. So let's look and see. This is where the sun and the moon are in opposition. The sun is also conjunct the fixed star Spica. And having the moon conjunct Chiron in Aries very much speaks to me of an illumination of some kind. And that illumination is potentially an awareness of how something that feels dark or disruptive propels me to move forward. Again, Libra is your 5th house. Aries is going to be your 11th house. And the square to Pluto, which is still in play with the sun, is very much sort of this willingness to, how do I want to phrase it? It feels almost like, okay, the trine to Jupiter is giving you an opportunity to revisit how you think about yourself. The square to Pluto in your 8th house is challenging you to allow for the transformation. The full moon is illuminating that without the transformation, maybe the things that you want won't come to fruition, and you are being required to be brave in using your skills, in setting up the home that you want, or the intention. First of all, again, you're mercurial, you're ruled by your mind. So starting to put your mind into the what will it feel like? Letting your mind serve you through this Jupiterian feel-good energy. Jupiter expands. Jupiter actually, while it represents higher education, it also represents philosophies that we are in some ways hypotheses. We can look at philosophy in ways that things can be, but they're not always anchored into the earth. So I really think that Jupiter here in your 1st house is holding space for you to come to an awareness, and the challenges that the other planets present support your movement forward, because otherwise humans tend to be complacent. All right. Now let's just look at the moon's aspects. The moon is squaring Pluto as well, which means that there's a T-square to Pluto and there's a T-square to Mars. So there's 2 focuses on this full moon on those 2 malefic planets, the planet of aggression, the planet of anger and resentment, Mars, and the planet of psychological manipulation, power, and control through money and sex, Pluto. This also, I'll tell you, could very well be bad news for some celebrities out there as the darkness within them erupts out on a public stage. But this isn't about celebrities or public figures. This is about you. So Gemini, allowing yourself to feel your way, the moon's sextile and the Chiron's exact sextile to Jupiter give you an opportunity to see how the wound can now be transformed into the gift. And that is the beauty of Chiron. So this first becomes an illumination, and then we're going to take action moving forward, meaning action that is started with our fifth house energy, Libra energy. That's the way I want to put it. All right. Oh, Venus also moves into Sagittarius on this day. Let's go a little bit later in the day. Let's go to 4 p.m. And this Venus likes to be in Sagittarius. She enjoys the fire of Sagittarius, the adventure of Sagittarius, the intrigue of foreign lands, foreign people. And this is your seventh house of partnerships. And so I really think this is all sort of a domino effect for my Geminis, opening you up to greater levels of love, romance, pleasure, fun, and adventure. I don't know what chapter any one of you are in individually, but I don't think that really matters. I think it's more about opening the space. So Venus is going to traverse through Sagittarius, and she's going to hit some very significant points. First being the great attractor at 14 degrees of Sagittarius, which could bring in a partnership of some kind, both either a collaboration and or a intimate partner, if that's what you want. It could also bring in more money. That's a possibility. What was the other thing I wanted to say? Let's click on her real quick. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is, and as she gets to the end of her sojourn with through Sagittarius, she will hit this galactic center, where the things that she has intended on during this period of time, they could be downloads and information that you get from the universe that surprise you and inspire you into action. I love the sextile between Venus and Pluto here. This feels as if when Venus was in Scorpio and having challenges with Pluto, that now she's trying to implement those new philosophies within herself. And as she does that, she can't necessarily see how the road will play out, but she's a little bit brave about what needs to be released. She's really intent upon feeling her sense of self, her sense of her skills and her confidence. And she's also willing to go into a spiritual dynamic in order to manifest that. Neptune and Venus are fast friends, best friends. And when Venus starts with her spiritual practices, her awareness of her intentions, thanking God and the universe, gratitude, appreciation, things can pop. And while you may not feel how you will innovate right away, innovation will be forthcoming, which means you can potentially feel a 2.0 version of your life. All right, let's go now to the 22nd, where the sun will enter Scorpio. Okay, so as the sun enters Scorpio, it approaches the Shapley attractor. And I think this is very powerful because the Shapley attractor is a point at 2 degrees, 39 minutes of Scorpio, where if you have any natal planets within 5 to 10 degrees or 12 degrees orb, the tighter the orb, the more intense the energy. But it's where you're releasing false attachments to things. And if you see a generational planet at that degree or within that, then part of your generation is releasing false attachments as well. So it would happen on a personal level as well as an environmental and communal level. We see that the sun is making a square to Pluto. This is a very quick transit, but a very powerful one, again, because Scorpio is your 6th house of work, of health, of the things you feel enslaved to mentally. So I think that's important to pay attention to. We also see that as Venus moves on, I believe she's creating a square. Not quite yet. Let me move a little bit forward. Let me go to the 25th. On the 25th, we see that Venus is in a bit of a square, and it is a growing square with Saturn. And again, this is really where Saturn is this planet that, when you first encounter Saturn's energy, it just holds your feet down and says, walk this path that you have already chosen. And each step moving forward, Saturn's asking you again and again, is this the path that you want? Because if it is not, you better change gears right now, because as you proceed, I'm going to expect endurance. I'm going to expect you to put your emotional body aside so that you can live your dreams. Venus here is experiencing Saturn holding her feet to the fire to shift her belief system. Sagittarius, again, is your 7th house. This is the house of relationships, of cooperation, of peace. So Saturn is tasking you, as Pisces is your 10th house. Is your career status, is your career ambitions, are you standing in leadership for your own sense of peace, love, cooperation, and balance in relationships? And she's making a nice sextile to your 5th house of Libra. Now, this point here is about to get to the South Node will be at 2 degrees of Libra, and that's going to be extremely significant because it's going to task everyone to examine the relationship they have with themselves as source energy. And these transits are teeing you up for that at this time. So your individuality, putting yourself first, sort of looking at what are my hopes and my dreams, what do I want to nurture, not only now, but in the future? What's the 2.0 version of me? And then surrendering action right now. It's almost like the action is about being emotionally brave versus trying to create something to prove to yourself that you're right about the transformation. Now, this transit of Venus is going to go on throughout the rest of the month. So that's how the month's going to end. But let's just move to the 29th. And on the 29th, we see that Mars is almost at the end of its journey in Cancer, but it has started an opposition to its co-ruler of Scorpio, Pluto. This is very significant because these two guys just aren't really nice. They try to be nice and they can master it, but unconsciously, they're extremely challenging. Overall, we are going to see people in the environment outside of ourselves very passionate about protecting their homes, their right to protect their homes. And Pluto's opposition in the sign of government is going to, we're days before the United States election. So things could be very, very impassioned is the word I want to use. Some people might say inflamed. Some people might say even angry. But I think for my Scorpios, this is for my Geminis, having this, I'm looking at Mars and Pluto and I'm thinking Scorpio, the transformation that's being offered to you about your skills, your 2nd house, being brave about, that might be true, but is that truth holding me to a past that I don't need anymore? Because this Scorpio energy here with Mercury and Scorpio is giving you an opportunity to really release yourself from that mental stress and enslavement that the 6th house can represent when we are too dutiful to a system or a process. And we're not discerning ourselves as a part of that. I also think that's very much evidenced by Mars being brave in his connection to Neptune right here. And saying, you know what, the best way I can swim through this is to connect to my divinity, to do my meditations, to spend that time in quiet, whether it be take a nap, listening to good music, a hot bath, it really does not matter, but it's super important. And we're going to go over here now to Halloween here in the United States on the 31st. And Mercury is almost out of Scorpio, but we do see Venus. She's been on the great attractor and now she's still within orb, but she is making an opposition here now to your 1st house and Jupiter. So you could find yourself very much, feeling a push-pull again with your belief system. Now, when I go down to beliefs, I want to be very clear, Gemini. It's not just your belief in yourself as a good human. It's Jupiter rules commerce, rules sales, rules writing, publishing, money, wealth, expansion. If Mars's transit through your 2nd house didn't inspire you on some level to take your skills and capitalize on them, this opposition is going to give you something outside of yourself that's going to be potentially irritating, that's going to rub up against that belief system, and it's going to sort of demand that you stand up for what you want. And that is further evidenced by Venus's continued square with Saturn. And Saturn's stationing about now. It will go direct next month. So that's very powerful for Saturn at 12 degrees of Pisces, because it's doubling down on that spiritual process, that routine that gives you a sense of anchor and rooting. I get up in the morning and I go do my run, and then I do my meditation, or I do my meditation every morning in the shower. Water's always good with meditations. So that's kind of how the month ends. I also think that you could feel a little bit of, if we look at Jupiter, there's also this idea that Jupiter rules large organizations like religious organizations, educational systems, and judicial systems. It literally rules the Justice Department. So there could be somewhere where a sense of justice is coming into play. Either you are feeling something is unjust, and it may require you to stand up for yourself and to speak your mind. Chiron is making a sextile right now to Jupiter. Both are retrograde. Aries, again, is your 11th house of your hopes and your dreams. So while it may feel a little tense, I think with the right verbiage and the right, I shouldn't say right, but that foundation that Saturn's giving you with your spiritual, the soul's voice within you, connecting with that could give you exactly the inspiration and the verbiage and the language to communicate effectively and have this actually turn into something that feels productive versus just opposing. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. All right, my Geminis, that's it for October 2024. We're going to get into even more interesting energies as we move forward. We'll have some significant planetary changes in 2025. Pluto starting the role here in 2024, moving into Aquarius. We will see Neptune move into Aries in 2025. And then in 2026, 27, I believe we're going to see Uranus move into your first house. All of this is significant because it's being teed up now. And your awareness of what you want and your willingness to put in the processes to mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically connect with those things will be very powerful for your experience moving forward. All right, I will see you soon. Please like, please subscribe, please share, and I'll be back in November. See you soon.